of course, as a parent, they always have certain expectation on your kids. But giving on my personal experience, I tend to be a more lax. Even though I think deep in me, of course, I have certain things I would like them to. But then I don't impose on them because I know that it is at the end it's up to them, right? It is up to them, and we should be there to support them in whatever decision they make. We need, especially for this generation, we really need them to give them that space, allow them to explore, and being supportive, and that's how, and that's actually a major motivation why I want to continue to serve Hong Kong and want to continue to make this city a good place, because I want them to come back. Or my older son study overseas, and I want him to come back. I can't force him to come back. He has all these choices. But if Hong Kong remains attractive, right, for talent and for anyone to come to improve the quality of life and so on, then hopefully they will choose. And not just him, other young people will come and choose Hong Kong as their home.
I have 4 kids, so I have also very vested interest on hoping that they would come back to Hong Kong and really loving our city and our home, and that it continues to shine and attract the best and the brightest. Everybody, I'm so honored today to invite our inaugural guest, Mr. Bernard Chan. Thank you so much, Bernie, for accepting our invitation to come today. I've actually been such a huge fan of you for many years. I still remember actually maybe 20 plus years ago when I actually read one of your personal sharing in one of the magazines about why you entered public service. Mm-hmm. I remember you were sharing about how as a teenager you went through some health issues, mm-hmm. and how that impacted you on your calling to serve the public, to serve those in need. But also, just also because of that, also you've just been such an advocate for health and wellness, and obviously we can see you've been very healthy and well all these years. So such an honor to have you on our show and also to be our inaugural guest. Thank you, Bernie.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for giving me a chance to have a good chat and also share with others how I see the future of Hong Kong and so on.
Mm-hmm. So as we move towards talking about the future, actually, could you maybe share with our guest, I was actually really impacted by, that health incident. Could you maybe help our viewers recap a bit about what had happened and how that shaped you to that calling of serving the public?
Well, I was really sick during the time I was in college. I think I was first diagnosed with this rare disease. It's called Takayasu arthritis disease, and I was 18. I first felt the symptom, headache, and then morphed into migraine headache pretty much in the first semester of my freshman year in college. I didn't think much of it at the time because I never had that experience before. It was a few months later that my parents asked me to go to have a more thorough checkup at the hospital. It's only until then I realized that I have this rare disease. And so 3 years of pretty much a health ordeal. But then that was not just the 3 years, right? Because even subsequently, for many years thereafter, I was constantly being monitored and so on and so on. It wasn't until, I think it took a long time, I think they finally declared that I'm in remission, but I think it went on for almost like 10 plus years. You can imagine that's completely disrupted my college educations, and for a long time, I think a good 10 years I was in denial, because you can imagine that every 6 months I have to go back for my thorough checkup at the hospital, and you really actually have no idea where it's going to happen next until you have that checkup, right? Every time they have a MRI or CT on me, then it's only then I realize, okay, do I have another 6 more months to go? So that was pretty much of a very down time of my life. But obviously, I'm very grateful that 10 years have given me a huge wake-up call. I finally learned to accept that, this is my life and what I should do about it. So,
Thank you for that very heartfelt sharing. I guess, is that really the key to how you balance so many things? I guess because of those 10 years, you realize that time is finite, that we all only have so much time because you are an extremely busy man, at home, at business, in public service, and you've been involved in so many different things over the past many years you've been in public service. What's the key to you balancing all these things?
yeah, I think to start with, you're right. I think my health saga have taught me something, right? It taught me to not to procrastinate. This episode of things that happened in the past keep coming back, and reminded me that there's so many unfinished businesses that I never resolve, I never address. So and given that this happened so many times, so I finally come to the terms that hey, there's no guarantee there is a tomorrow for me, right? At the time, so I decided that whatever chances I'm giving, I should make the best use of that. I should, and not to take for granted. It's not just my health saga. Life is always full of surprises, and always full of challenges, and full of situations that it's out of your control, right? But I think that health saga have given me reason to believe that there's always, sort of light at the end of the tunnel. But the key thing though to resolve these things is always about the attitude. It's only until you learn to accept it and you embrace it and you act on it. I didn't start with that, right? I think I was just like any ordinary person, and I panicked and I was upset and I was in denial. You can imagine everything, right? So you blame it on someone else and so on. But it was only until that I finally comes to the reality and I learned to accept that and to find motivation. And I've been giving a lot of, like you said, I've been giving a lot of opportunities in the past. But Kevin, let me tell you, most of these opportunities, so-called opportunities, are not exactly good opportunities. Usually I've been asked to deal with some crisis. And you can imagine you have 1,000 reasons to walk away from these situations. But interestingly, it happened to me every single time, is somehow, once I embrace it, once I try to think positively, things will work out, right? And I'm able to turn it around. And it's only until when you turn it around, then it's like, wow, then of course people start to think, oh wow, you were giving all these good chances. They didn't start with being good. Usually good thing will never happen to me. I'm always being tasked to deal with some thankless job. But it's about the attitude. I think attitude is perhaps the key to everything, right?
I think your positive growth mindset is so pivotal to your life, and I think also to not take things for granted. I guess one question I'm sure a lot of viewers might also have is that Bernie, you come from a very prominent family, and with that of course comes great opportunities, but at the same time you mentioned sometimes it could be a challenge as well. Like, how would you view that legacy for you and for your children, and how has that been a positive or possibly a challenge for you?
Well, interestingly, you're right. I grew up in a very traditional family. My grandfather was a banker. My father was a banker. My uncle's a banker. My brother's a banker. We are a banking family. So everyone in the family has extensive exposure to banking. So growing up, my dream job is to be a banker as well. Now, clearly, I didn't end up doing what I started off with. And these days, when I talk to young people, I say, everyone must have some sort of a dream job, a career. But how many of them actually end up getting what they want, right? I would say that the chances is probably less than 10%. I'm just making up the number, but I'm sure it's the far majority of the people don't get what they want. So the question then is, what do you do? If you happen to be that lucky 10%, say 10% that got what they want, then you don't need to hear from me because you already got what you want. But the thing is, what about the greater majority of the people that didn't get what they want? Then what do you do? Well, most often time, you will continue to dream about the things you want to do. But life has to move on. You have to find a job. You have to do something to support your life, right? So you continue to dream while you just carry on, right? That's one scenario. The other scenario is same. You continue to dream. You find another job or whatever. But then it's back to my earlier point about attitude, right? Now, giving that, whatever you've been giving to, what do? You try to make the best out of it. I'm happy to be in that case because I didn't manage to, because of the disruptions in my health and other things and other reasons. So I never actually end up going into finance in the banking side. But was it bad? Well, because so happened, I managed to giving another chance in something else. My dad asked me to go into insurance, and of course I ended up graduating in studio art instead of econ. And at the time, I thought these are all to me, I thought that was second class, right? Second class. And I felt kind of bad because I felt like, oh wow, I was hoping that I can carry the family legacy to your questions earlier, right? I thought I would do that. So I feel so bad that I didn't get what I want, right? But again, interestingly, because after 10, 15 years of the whole health saga, I learned to accept it, right? I learned to accept it. It didn't start off that way, but after 10, 15 years, I finally learned to accept it, and I try to make the best out of it. Never thought that none of these things will have any use in the future. But guess what? If I didn't move to insurance, I would have never gone to politics in the first place because after a few years joining insurance, I was asked to go and run for the Legislative Council for the insurance industry. And you can imagine if I didn't study art, I would not have given the opportunity to help choosing the design for Let's Go and gone into heritage conservation. I don't even know how that was connected. And not to mention that now I'm, in charge of AMPLAS, and I was in charge of Palace Museum, all these things, right? So it's amazing that I thought I failed to live up to my family legacy, right? I thought like, oh gee, I wasn't able to follow that track, but I suppose I'm not so bad after all today.
I'm sure.
But given what happened to me now, so your other questions about my children. Now, of course, as a parent, they always have certain expectation on your kids. But given on my personal experience, I tend to be a more flexible. Even though I think deep in me, of course, I have certain things I would like them to, but then I don't impose on them because I know that it is at the end it's up to them, right? It is up to them, and we should be there to support them in whatever decision they make. We need, especially for this generation, we really need them to give them that space, allow them to explore, and being supportive, and that's how. And that's actually a major motivation why I want to continue to serve Hong Kong and want to continue to make this city a good place, because I want them to come back. When my older son study overseas, and I want him to come back. I can't force him to come back. He has all these choices. But if Hong Kong remain attractive, right, for talent and for anyone to come to improve the quality of life and so on, then hopefully they will choose. And not just him, other young people will come and choose Hong Kong as their home.
I have 4 kids, so I have also very vested interest on hoping that they would come back to Hong Kong and really loving our city and our home, and that it continues to shine and attract the best and the brightest. Just now we touched on the education and what we aspire for the children or the youth in the future. In such changing times of our world, and where skill sets, traditional skill sets or knowledge may not be so relevant nowadays, how would you advise, our youngsters, how should they be equipped?
So this is the new era where, every city, every country is going to be competing for those top talent. That's the reality. But I think this generation's now today is very fortunate because they have far more new options, right? No longer it's just confined to these few specific professions, but now obviously when it comes to IT, it's not even about IT anymore, it's about creativity, right? There are all kinds of opportunities in that area. Arts and culture is another case in point, because Hong Kong is building a big, arts and culture ecosystem. Not just the musicians or the artists, or not only that, you're talking about curatorship, lighting, staging, you name it. And you have the public and the private side, right? The commercial is also very vibrant. We are now the second largest, art trading hub in the world. And you can imagine that there's so many different opportunities coming out from that. I think traditionally, medicine or medical is where considered to be one of the top jobs in Hong Kong, right? But I think young people today, they may not simply just go for the status or go for the money. I'm sure arts and culture may be not one profession that we're going to bring you lots of money. But I think the generation today, they have different aspiration. If they were to ask me, what is what sort of promising career in the future? Honestly, how would I know? I don't know, right? Because things are changing so rapidly. What I do know, and back to my very early point, is about that attitude. That you're always willing to try and learn new things, right? And don't stick to whatever the norm. So you need to be very adaptable, and you need to be very knowledgeable, right? Because Hong Kong always claimed to be a connector of something, right? We're connecting the East and West, whether it's in culture or it's in business and so on. To be a connector, meaning you need to know both sides. New doors will keep open if you're willing to keep trying, even when things are, sort of move against you. But if you're willing enough, good attitude, things will work out. New doors will open. I think is how Hong Kong can always remain resilient and turn around.
Thank you, Bernie. I think the idea of having our youth having the positive mindset, having exposure, is so key, I guess, for them. I definitely agree. I think having that regional global mindset is very key to their generation and also for the future of Hong Kong. Now that I think in the past we've always been very focused on mainland and Greater Bay, which I definitely think is still very key. But more recently, I think the role of Hong Kong being a super connector is also outwardly or regionally. So hence, I think we've also been seeing that RCEP is increasingly talked about. So for somebody who's in the early 20s, if we were to talk about regional opportunities and regional exposure along RCEP and One Belt, One Road and mainland, what are some maybe key exposure points you would like to enlighten them with?
First thing first, I think you need to actually go there and learn. You talk about RCEP, ASEAN countries. You need to be there to understand, right? And I think that's the key to Hong Kong's future, right? As you put it, as I mentioned earlier, we're the connector, right? So when you're connecting, let's say the mainland of China to the world, right? We're not just talking about connecting to the West. I mean, so often that we always talk about the US, the UK, the Europe, more the developed countries. But actually, so many people have exposure to that already. So what value are you adding on? Today, China has amazing trade relationship with the ASEAN. So how can Hong Kong have value in helping the country to facilitate that, right? But then how many people in Hong Kong actually understand ASEAN? So the fact that if you can even go out there to stay a few years, whether it's Thailand or even Cambodia. You can imagine, Cambodia was like, it's kind of backward. Hey, that's exactly when, you have lesser competition because fewer people are there. But maybe that you should go there and take advantage of that. And once you go to a place like Cambodia, Laos, then you can slowly appreciate the whole region, right? Because the last thing you want is try to impose your culture into someone else. No, you should understand their culture, their needs is different. They're all different. So I was very fortunate. I think when I first came back to work in Hong Kong, I was asked to go to Myanmar, to look after a project. So for good 1 year, I had to go to Yangon every month. And you can imagine the conditions then wasn't very good, right? I flew on this plane that I constantly very worried because it's a very old plane, and wow, everything is shocking, the whole experience, right? But hell, I learned a lot, right? I learned a lot, and that actually have helped me do everything I do today. Right? Those experiences I had in working in all these places in ASEAN. So I think the key is that exposure, willing to take it. So if the young people today, if you mentioned the 20-something, if they were given that chance, take it, even though it may not be your first choice, right? I just think that the young people should be open-minded and don't shy away from the so-called lesser option, because I think that is actually, assuming that you can actually do it well, right? That may actually stands out, from your peers, right? So that's what I would do.
Yeah, actually, as you were sharing earlier, I think one example that recently that stands out for me is recently at our FIFA, our opening song is sang by a Korean pop artist, BTS.
Yes.
He actually, within the first 24 hours of airing his song on social media, he garnered 34 million views. So he broke the record. And I think if we were to look back at K-pop, in the last, maybe actually 20 years ago, it was actually Hong Kong's time in the entertainment in the region. But now I think, Korean entertainment has really taken the region, if not globally, by storm. So I think, opportunities will always come, and encouraging our next generation to take those opportunities is so key and so timely. Actually, I was thinking that for arts and culture, a lot of times we think that it's not something we may traditionally value, but I think with this example, with Bernie, you as a living example, actually arts and culture is very key. Yeah, I think it allows us to be an effective communicator. That learned balance of different things it allows us to be a better person.
Well, I agree, and I think in particular today, right, in the world so divided. I mean, everything is so political, geopolitics. So there are fewer things that we can agree, right? But arts and culture, I still think that it will be that common language that can still connect us back to the world, right? Politics, sometimes it's difficult to find a common ground, but I think arts and culture, we can find common grounds and to reconnect. So I am so hopeful that the West Kowloon Cultural District and other parts of Hong Kong can help to reconnect Hong Kong back to the world. So since Hong Kong's, in fact, it's been tasked by the central government to be the east and west in the cultural connector, and that's what we should do, right? But first thing first, though, is I think Hong Kong people also have to embrace arts and culture, right? Today we have, in Hong Kong, we have two world-class museums. We have the M+, it's a contemporary art museum. We have the Palace Museum, it's ancient Chinese treasures. And as you walk into the two museums, almost immediately you will notice that the M+ museums are largely patronized by younger audience, whereas the Palace are more mature, right? Naturally. But I don't think that is good enough for me, for Hong Kong, at least too. I think what I would like to is for that crossover, for the younger audience to appreciate Talent Museum, and as well as a more mature audience to appreciate contemporary art. I think as and when we can do that, I think then Hong Kong's overall cultural value would have moved up to the same level like London and New York. You know, we're a latecomer. I mean, Hong Kong is not known to be strong in arts and culture in the past. Today, the hardware is there. You know, we have these amazing institutions, but we have yet to develop on the software side, people, whether the practitioners, but as well as the audience. So we need to help to advance the appreciations among the audience and learn to be inclusive, right? Again, we can still disagree on a lot of other things, but at least in the people-to-people connectivity and arts and culture, there's still that common grounds on a lot of other things, right? And arts and music and film and everything. So I think I really wholeheartedly believe that this is our moment now. Before, 10, 15 years ago, I don't think we're in any position to even talk about it. Today we do.
Definitely. I think for our international viewers on the show, actually, I think Hong Kong with West Kowloon, with Bernie, you're heading up with M+ and Talent Museum, it's really becoming a whole redevelopment. Could we maybe let our international viewers see what are we creating actually in West Kowloon, the whole roadmap and blueprint of it?
Well, the entire site is 40 hectares, big, gigantic for Hong Kong standard, and it's right in the waterfront of a harbor. Is amazing location, and today so far we have we have these two world-class museums already open. By the way, we are not a branch of Beijing Palace. We are Hong Kong standalone Palace Museum, but of course we work very closely with Beijing Palace Museum. Currently, we have over 900 pieces of national treasures being on loan to Hong Kong from Beijing. But we don't just serve Chinese culture, because we're attached to this East and West. So concurrently right now at the Palace Museum, we also have some European collections being displayed on loan from, in this case, the Liechtenstein Princely Collection. Again, M+ Museum, we have the largest Chinese contemporary art collection, but we also have other collection as well. Currently, we have the Kusama, the very famous Japanese contemporary artist, Kusama. Her work is in display in our museum. So apart from these two world-class museums, we also have a place called Free Space. It's for performance. Largely these days, a young people's performance venue. And we also have the Sea Tree, which is a Chinese opera theater. So these are the 4 or 5 venue that already completed. What's next? We have the Lyric Theater under construction. They should be completed by 2024, and many more. But we have yet to find the funding. So hopefully, if we can secure funding, we can build the music theater. Not the music theater, music centers. We have the Broadway Theater. We still have probably 6, 7 more other arts and cultures venue in the making. And behind all this, we also have the commercial components. We also have office and residential that help to generate the income to support the entire arts and culture offerings. So it's like a 20 years project. So I would say that we are halfway. It's a great start. It put Hong Kong on the map, but there's still many more to come. But I think once all the rules, restrictions are being relaxed, I can only imagine people will be flocking in from mainland China to the rest of the world to come and see these amazing facilities we have.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I look at all the work that you and your team have done for West Kowloon and M+, I really don't know of any other international city that has that dense population of music and arts. And just now you mentioned that we have the biggest, we're the second biggest art trading center of the world. So, you know, this dense, I feel like it's New York, London, and you know, all the Beijing and all kind of combined into one city, which makes it such a unique space, because I really don't know of any other city that has so many museums and music centers all in such one small location.
Well, definitely not in Asia. I think, you know, obviously if you go to New York and London, you can go there for a weekend and you can do multiple things. And that's what I think, you know, Hong Kong can also offer on this side of the world. And of course, assuming all the travel the restrictions relax, then, you know, this is amazing, right? Because, you know, we have, especially with a growing, that big consuming power from the region, the middle class and in the entire region, plus of course China. China has something like almost 400 million of that middle class. Huge consumption power.
I think, you know, apart from the arts and culture in Hong Kong, I think in the last few years, we've also, you know, created these beautiful harborside parks. So, you know, we're from Kennedy Town, we now, you know, on both sides of our water, we can now have these beautiful promenade parks. From Kennedy Town, we can go all the way to Shao Kei Wan. From West Kowloon, we can go all the way to Kwun Tong. And I think it's, you know, our city is doing such amazing work in creating this public space. There's the arts and culture. There's also the leisure and recreation that we really, you know, I think, you know, it's a city that is not just to be enjoyed by ourselves, but really see our regional visitors coming and really just seeing a new leaf, new change, and just enjoying the cities, which is so beautiful. So moving from arts and culture, I know, Bernie, you were very pivotal to our social service sector in Hong Kong. And today, and you are still very pivotal. So I remember actually still one of the earliest iconic programs that you started was a caring company, which was really about bringing commercial sector into helping with social service issues, essentially. And also having been one of long-standing chairman of our Hong Kong Council of Social Services, how do you see, you know, our NGO developments in Hong Kong moving forward, and also now being a steward of our Jockey Club, which is our biggest funder of a lot of our social services? How do you view this for Hong Kong moving forward?
Well, it's another classic example how I managed to add value to something that I totally not familiar with, right? Because it's a long story how I get into that space. You know, I know nothing about welfare sector prior to my involvement with the Hong Kong Council of Social Service. It was just by accident that I was invited to the council by the previous chairman, the Honorable Eric Lee. So he invited me to join the council. Like probably most Hong Kong people, we're just confined to the things that we know, that we enjoy. So it's like my work and my home, my little space in front of my home, and so on and so on. Everything else, not my problem, right? So, so that exposure is an eye-opening for me. First time, even though I live in this city all my life, almost all my life, you name it, there's tons of issues, social issues that you have in this town. I suppose it's no different than other countries too. So, and of course, that at the time when I was asked to join, Hong Kong was coming out from from the first Asia financial crisis. So we were in financial deficit. The government is in a financial deficit. And so there were cutback on funding, and of course, including the welfare sector. So I was being put in that job at the time. I took over as chairman on a sector that I know very little of. And then I thought, wow. And it's surprisingly, because I came from the business sector, right? So I came to that conclusion that there's a problem because there's a lack of communication between the business sector and the welfare sector then. And they don't seem to appreciate each other, right? The business sector are blaming the welfare sector for overspending. Meantime, the welfare sector seems to think that all the social issues came from the business sector. To a large degree, I actually agree. But guess what? They all point fingers to the government, right? The fact that I'm now in that position of wearing both hats, right? I'm business and I am the chair for this council. I thought, wait, there's some missing piece here. First is they don't understand each other. And I also then came to realize that there's actually a natural synergy for them to work together, right? For the betterment of Hong Kong. So it was just by accident that I came up with the idea. But again, it's really nothing new. I mean, you see that in other countries. You have a lot of people doing CSR. Now, we start off with it's just a CSR, corporate social responsibility. It morphed into something else today. But when we first started off, basically, it was a CSR model. And I said, hey, why can't we join forces together? Especially, NGOs cannot no longer just count on government subsidy. By the way, many of the large NGOs in Hong Kong used to, subsidized by government by, to the extent of 90%. But that funding, given the overall environment at the time, is that you cannot count on there will be more funding coming. So NGOs need to explore funding from elsewhere. So it will only be perfectly natural that they should reach out to people like in the business. Today, everyone talks about ESG. There's already the desire from the business sector wants to be seen doing something to make a difference. So I thought, why don't we create that platform? So when you mentioned Caring Company, it was a platform, matchmake them. Yeah. Of course, there are already then quite a few companies already started off, but now with this platform, I'm basically, institutionalized this whole exchange. And in return, we also give them, so-called an award at the time to recognize that effort. Never I thought this thing will grow bigger than what I have originally have in mind. But today, we're almost 20 years and we still exist. The platform still exists. But of course, over 20 years, we move up. It's no longer just simply stay at CSR level. It's move up because people now want more than just, is that going to be just money or it's just volunteer time? That still exists, but people now want to see impact, right? What changes have we collectively have done? I think when I first started off, I still remember the then chief executive asked me, it's like, so this whole partnership thing, how much money you raise, right? And I'll try to explain to him that this is not just about money, right? Money, of course, is important, but it's beyond money, right? Because we together try to solve problem, and a lot of the time, money cannot solve problem, right? It's by putting all the minds together, we can actually create solution to address this problem. It's not, you have to be proactive rather than reactive. It's almost like, we got a problem, then you got to bring money to fix the problem. I think by then it's too late. Can we together actually maybe change course and not to allow these social issues to keep coming back? And in return, save money for everybody. Not only save money for NGO, ultimately, of course, it saves taxpayers, business. So there's a natural synergy for everyone to work together. So that was my idea at the time. So it obviously evolved and moved way beyond today. So we're no longer just a welfare platform. We are again moving into the environment, although that was not originally the mandate. But then if you're a good company, today you have to care about the environment. And not just the environment, what about your own staff, all your colleagues? So it became a huge movement. And of course, increasingly become very demanding. And I think company, we have many SME, their priorities are different. So I was very fortunate that even with someone actually have so little knowledge of the welfare needs at the time, I find myself in that space and able to create create a difference. That's why I kept saying earlier on that sometimes you'll be amazed that even with someone like me who has absolutely no background in anything, when I'm put in that position, if you're open-minded enough, and somehow, you can create new doors.
Thank you, Bernie. I think, just as you were sharing about, your experiences of social welfare, I just see you as such a gifted communicator and also building bridges. I think, earlier you mentioned about opportunities in LegCo and then in the insurance sector and then the arts and culture and then with welfare sector, you have such a gift of just building these bridges and connecting people. That's something I think, that the central government is really hoping Hong Kong is able to, in this new season, really play a bigger role in telling the China story and also, more importantly, the Hong Kong story. What are your views on how we could do that better, or how even our government could be doing that better?
I think this is in fact probably more important time than any probably in the recent history of Hong Kong, right? Given the world is so divided and so low lack of trust between nations, and even worse is now with the birth of social media. Obviously, social media is, you can see that as very positive. People now have access to so many things. I'm sure you and I spend countless nights watching different things on the social media. But that's great. But then at the same time, though, and sadly to say that the fact that we now get access to information, but it's also misinformation, right? So how often that you and I get people send you stuff that that we never fact check them. And so in the last couple of years, I see that firsthand. Obviously, given what happened to Hong Kong, it's very sad. So I have friends overseas that continue to questions about Hong Kong's future because, of course, given their exposure to the news in their countries about Hong Kong and the social media and so on. So it is so sad that while, and of course with COVID, right? So that the physical connectivity is lost for 2 years. So this is such an important time, right, for us now to go back to the world and to reconnect with them. So obviously the government play a very important role. Chief Executive John Lee was in Bangkok for the APEC meeting. He stayed behind and he asked a group of businessmen from Hong Kong, including myself. We went there and together with him to talk to the local business people and tell the Hong Kong story. So the government has a huge role in shaping that dialogue. But I also think that it's even more important that each of us from the business sector, maybe perhaps even beyond business sector, even yourself, because each of us have your own contacts overseas, right? In fact, I think they probably equally better chance that they might appreciate your opinion than, let's say, the official channel, because it takes a while for them even to accept that this is real, right? Because they may not trust the official channel as much, but they will trust you. They might trust me, because why should we lie to them? They are your friends, right? They're your counterparts, your business partner, or your friends. Why would you lie to them? So I think each of us actually serve an important role, right, to reconnect, to help to reconnect to the world. And we can be objective. We don't have to be hard selling anything, right? But just to tell the truth. I think this is amazing that we are talking about this today. We took for granted that, hey, this is the truth. Why should anyone question that? But in that last 3 years, oh my goodness, it's so shocking that that truth is somehow being I don't even know what is truth anymore. Right? People start to question about everything, the rationale behind everything, right? And so I find myself often have to defend that, right? It's just amazing. And so this is such a pivotal time today for each of us, hopefully together with the government. The government will, see the thing though, actually even more importantly is each of us should be equipped with the answers. Again, we cannot assume that everyone in Hong Kong actually understand what's happening, why certain decisions are made. So we need to be equipped for us to go back and tell that Hong Kong story. For example, arts and culture. We have to, our own Hong Kong people needs to be convinced that we actually have the best arts and culture offerings in this region. So each of us should be well aware of that, and enough for you and I to go and tell the people, the world, and so on and so on and so on. So I think, and the government can help us on that. The government can actually equip us with this information to allow every one of us to go out and tell the Hong Kong story. So telling the Hong Kong story should not just be the government's job. It should be every one of us.
Yeah. As we come towards the end of our show, I think, your growth and positive mindset, not taking things for granted, and being resilient in pushing through challenges really stands out, and building these bridges. I think, and also with your accolade of titles and achievements, and just now I mentioned, I see arts and culture people being world changers when I mentioned the Korean K-pop history. I'm sure a lot of viewers are curious as to, Bernie, what are you going to be doing next?
Well, funny enough, I stepped down from the Executive Council, that is the so-called Cabinet of Hong Kong. I stepped down from that position, and I'm also going to be stepping down from my role in the National People Congress. And so many thought that, is he now exiting public service? But on the contrary, I'm not at all. I actually now have been tasked to take on a few very challenging jobs. Obviously, I will remain in arts and culture. The entire West Kowloon, I will be continuing to work on that for at least the next couple of years. And I truly believe that we can do so much more with that. I also have taken up another very important job, and that's the Our Hong Kong Foundation. It's the largest think tank in Hong Kong, and I want to take advantage of this platform to help to come up with policy recommendations and to shape the dialogue, to shape the narrative of Hong Kong. How can we improve the city? Back to our earlier points, talent retention is so important, right, for the city. So what are the issues that matters to the talents, right? So there has to be quality of life, better access to education, obviously healthcare, and living conditions and so on, the environment and so on. So these are the things that I would hope that the foundation can help to shape that discussions and dialogue, and hopefully giving the necessary mandate and support for the government to push further on these topics. So this is another area that I'll be working on. And of course, I will still remain very active in the NGO space, and together with my role now with the Jockey Club, which is, by the way, I understand they are probably the 8th largest charity in the world.
Yes.
So there's so much we can do with these resources to make Hong Kong a better place. So I guess I will continue to contribute to Hong Kong and to China as well. I mean, our country. We have an amazing story to tell about China, and I hope Hong Kong can serve China's interests. Hong Kong is not just serving Hong Kong's interests. Hong Kong's role should be serving China's interests. We have this amazing one country, two system platform that allow us to actually have the best of two. We are under one country, but we have that two system. Now, of course, it's not easy. So how do we play that role? But I certainly think we can. For example, I give you one good example is Palace Museum. Now, obviously there's Beijing Palace Museum, but why Hong Kong? Because Hong Kong can add additional value to it. We can try different things. We can use the Hong Kong narrative to tell the story. The object can be the same. You find the same objects in probably, you can be displayed in Beijing, you can display in Hong Kong. But why Hong Kong? Because we can use the Hong Kong narrative to connect the world to Chinese culture. And if we are successful in that, hopefully maybe Beijing Palace Museum can also take a few of the example that we make here to apply for them. So Hong Kong always serves as that testing ground for our country, because we have the flexibility and so on, right? Because after all, it's only 7 million, so we should be able to help to create that value for our country. So this is what I hope. I hope I can help to contribute to both Hong Kong and our country.
I'm sure we all look forward to, you continuously being our Hong Kong changer, shaper, also not just Hong Kong, our country, our region, and globally. If you were to say 3 things to our international viewers about Hong Kong in 2023, what would you like to share internationally?
Well, I want to say Hong Kong is resilient, right? Hong Kong has so much to offer, right? Hong Kong has so much to offer. Hong Kong is resilient, and Hong Kong is the window to the mainland China. So I want people to come back and to see us and to see our country.
And for our Hong Kong viewers, what would you recommend as 3 things for them to look forward to in Hong Kong in 2023?
For Hong Kong, for sure, I think is how we're going to come back from the pandemic, right? I think the path to recovery will start to happen. So we need to be ready. We need to be ready, and we need to think out of the box, because things will probably not be normal like we used to be, and we need to be very adaptive. Those are the 3 things.
Thank you. Be ready, proactive, and think outside the box. Thank you so much, Bernie, for your time today.
Thank you, Kevin.